Stephen, if I'm showing a client ranches and they want private waters, I think people intuitively know a lot about managing deer. They know a lot about managing wildlife. They probably know something about managing cattle if they're in that business.
Yes, sir.
But people don't have as much just intuitive knowledge about fisheries management.
Yeah.
What are some of the considerations to give there?
You know, the hard part about fisheries management is you can't see it.
Yeah.
You don't know what you have. So I try to put it into a stepwise process. The first step is to kind of define a goal. What do I want from the fishery before we ever start?
Right.
Because we can look at things like how many surface acres do we have? What's the forage like in the lake? We can look at those things and manipulate them to an extent. But what we got to know is, what do you want to grow? So I've caught this bass here. This fish, I would consider this a recreational fish. You know, it's a 1.5 pound fish. This is great for kids to consistently catch.
Mm-hmm.
If this is a trophy lake, this fish needs to come out because we need more forage for the fish that are in there. We got to pull small fish out. If this is a recreational fishery, then we wouldn't harvest this fish. We would put it back so that we can have plenty of fish for the kids to catch. Now that goes to your goal.
So you're managing your fish really similar to how I manage a deer herd.
It's exactly like your deer. The only difference is you can't see it.
Can't see them.
Now, once we understand your goal, then we go into the survey process. So we need to understand the surface acreage that we have. We might need to understand topography. So we would map the lake to get a topographic map. That would give us water volume and really start to talk to carrying capacity. How many pounds of fish can we support?
Mm-hmm.
Outside of surface acreage, then we need to look at forage. Do we have the right types of forage for the predators that will reach your goal? If we don't, we need to manipulate that forage base. Then we need to look at how many predators do we have? What kind of harvest do we need? And we would put some sort of harvest regulation where you would have a quota on the number of fish and the size you need to pull out. And the last thing is habitat. You know, if we've got a crappie fishery, we need dense habitat that's vertical out in deep water. If we have a largemouth fishery,
Old tree structure at the bottom.
tree structure,
Yep.
artificial rock piles, that kind of stuff. If we have a largemouth fishery, we need shoreline-based habitat. They're ambush predators that like to live on the shore.
Right.
So we would manipulate that. The biggest area that you will end up spending your money as a pond or a lake owner is typically controlling vegetation, because it's the wild card that we don't really control.
Right.
What controls vegetation is the water clarity, color, and the topography. Those are hard things to change. So, you know, whenever we're selecting fisheries to purchase, we're looking at aquatic vegetation and trying to determine, based on topography, will I have a big expense controlling that every year as well?
How would somebody estimate the financial responsibilities of managing private waters?
The first thing I would do is understand my surface acreage, because everything you do is going to be based on surface acreage. How many forage fish do I need to buy? How much herbicide do I apply? That's based on surface acreage.
Yep.
And then I would look at individual pieces of it. What is my risk? So if I measured a 1 acre lake that had an average depth of 10 foot, the risk of vegetation growing is almost nothing.
Yep.
If I measure it and I have a lot of water that's sub 6 foot, 5 foot, 4 foot, the risk is much higher for aquatic vegetation.
So the water temperature gets warmer, you get more sunlight to the bottom.
Yep. So it grows more plants where you're going to spend a lot of money. You could spend several $1,000s a year controlling plant in those real shallow bodies of water.
Mm-hmm.
So hard question to answer is, what should I expect to spend? It really depends on the fishery you have and your goal. The larger you want your fish to grow and the more you want of them, the more you're going to have to make sure water quality is good. You may want a fish feeder, something like a fish feeder. That's an external source of food. But
that's predominantly supporting your forage fish.
Supporting your
or
forage
your catfish.
fish. Yep.
You're not feeding your bass with a
You
feeder.
can. Yeah, there's high protein fish foods that can do that. But we're talking about $60 a month per feeder.
Mm-hmm.
In feed, plus the initial startup of purchasing a feeder.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, for a general rule, if I was going to be managing a fishery for somebody, I would budget about $2,000 per acre per year. If I was going to just you know, you're managing it yourself, you're probably going to have a little bit of a learning curve there. So I would budget $3,500 to $4,000 a year, what you're going to put in per acre.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, you look at no two bodies of water are made the same, and not every location is conducive to a 15-acre lake or something. So,
Right.
there's a lot of folks that buy a piece of property and they've got an acre
Mhm.
of surface water, acre and a half surface water. Everybody likes to catch bass, but it's hard to manage a bass population, especially a trophy bass population, in a small body of water.
Right.
Speak to that.
Yeah, it takes 10 pounds of forage to gain 1 pound on one bass.
Okay.
So when we start talking about a 1 surface acre pond, how many pounds of forage can we support to grow the bass the size you want them? You want 10-pound bass, and we can support 100 pounds of bass in the lake. We can only have 10 fish in a 1 acre lake. But to support that 100 pounds of bass, we need 1,000 pounds of forage. So it starts becoming just a limiting factor on the size. Anything smaller than an acre, you really need to stick to either trophy sunfish with a fish feeder or channel catfish. If you have a really good biologist in your area, you could also do hybrid crappie. Hybrid crappie are a little more difficult management, but you can do those in sub 1 acre ponds.
Yeah.
Once we get, I want to grow bass, largemouth or hybrid stripers, then we really need ponds that are larger than 1 surface acre. Once we start talking trophy bass, which I would consider fish over 10 pounds, we need to start talking 5+ acres of water.